Captain Marcus Cole stood at the edge of the excavation site on Mars, watching the dust settle around the massive hole his team had dug. 3 months of work had led to this moment. 3 months of digging through red rock and ancient soil to reach something that should not exist. The artifact was black, not just dark but a kind of black that seemed to eat light. It was shaped like a pyramid, about 2 meters tall, and covered in symbols that no human had ever seen before. When Marcus first saw it on the scanner, he thought it was a mistake. Now, standing here, he knew it was real. "Sir, the readings are off the charts," said Dr. Elena Vasquez, his chief scientist. She was holding a tablet and her hands were shaking. "The energy coming from this thing, it's unlike anything we have on record." Marcus nodded slowly. He was not a man who scared easily. 20 years in the Space Corps had taught him to stay calm, but something about this artifact made his skin crawl. It was old, very, very old, and it was waiting. "Get everyone back," he ordered. "I want a full quarantine around this site. No one touches it until we know what we're dealing with." The team moved quickly. They had trained for situations like this, though none of them had ever expected to actually find something. Mars was supposed to be dead. No life, no history, nothing but rocks and dust. But this artifact told a different story. That night Marcus could not sleep. He lay in his bunk at the base camp, staring at the ceiling. His mind kept going back to the artifact. The symbols on its surface had seemed random at first, but the more he thought about them, the more they seemed to form a pattern, a message. When morning came, he walked back to the site. The sun was just rising, painting the Martian sky in shades of pink and orange. The artifact stood there in the pit, unchanged, still black, still waiting. Elena was already there, running more tests. "I stayed up all night analyzing the data," she said without looking up. "Captain, this thing is over 2 billion years old." Marcus felt his breath catch. "That's impossible." "The carbon dating doesn't lie. Someone put this here long before life on Earth had even left the oceans." She finally looked up and Marcus could see the fear in her eyes. "Someone was here, Captain. Someone was watching." Before Marcus could respond, the artifact began to glow. It started as a faint light, deep within the black surface, but it grew brighter with each passing second. The symbols on its surface began to move, shifting and rearranging themselves. "Everyone back," Marcus shouted, but it was too late. A beam of light shot out from the top of the pyramid, straight up into the sky. It pierced through the thin Martian atmosphere and kept going, reaching out into the black void of space. And then the light changed. It split into 1,000 different beams, each one shooting off in a different direction, toward the distant stars. Marcus watched in awe and terror. Whatever this artifact was, it was sending a signal, and somewhere out there, something was going to receive it. The light show lasted for exactly 60 seconds. Then it stopped and the artifact went dark again. But Marcus knew that nothing would ever be the same. They had awakened something. And now, the universe knew that humanity existed. 3 weeks later, the first response came. The message arrived on every communication device on Earth at the same time. Radios, televisions, phones, computers, everything. It was a simple message, translated into every language known to man. "The Watchers acknowledge, the dormant ones have awakened, the trial begins." Panic spread across the globe. People did not know what it meant, but they knew it was not good. Governments called emergency meetings. Military forces went on high alert. And in the middle of it all, Marcus Cole was flown back to Earth to explain what had happened on Mars. He stood before the United Nations Security Council, facing the leaders of every major nation. They all wanted answers, but Marcus had none to give. "We found the artifact," he said. "We didn't touch it, it activated on its own. And now aliens are coming to destroy us," said the Chinese ambassador, "because of your discovery." "We don't know that," Marcus replied. "The message said trial. That could mean anything." But even as he said it, he knew it sounded hollow. Something was coming, and humanity was not ready. Dr. Vasquez had stayed on Mars to study the artifact. She sent daily reports, each one more disturbing than the last. The symbols on the artifact were changing. They were forming new patterns, showing images that made no sense. Stars being born and dying, planets being consumed by fire. And again, the image of a species rising, reaching for the stars and then disappearing. "It's showing us the history of the galaxy," Alina explained in one of her video messages. "Species after species, civilization after civilization. They all reached a certain point and then they were gone, wiped out. And now I think it's our turn." Marcus refused to believe it. Humanity had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and every other disaster the universe had thrown at them. They would survive this too. But then the ships arrived. They came through a fold in space, just beyond the orbit of Saturn. Thousands of them, each one the size of a city. They were made of the same black material as the artifact, and they moved in perfect formation, like a school of predators closing in on their prey. The world watched as the fleet approached. Some people prayed, others rioted, many simply waited, frozen in fear. This was the end, they thought. This was how humanity died. But Marcus Cole was not waiting, he was planning. The alien fleet stopped at the edge of the solar system, holding position just beyond Neptune. For 3 days they did nothing. They simply waited, their massive ships silent and still against the backdrop of stars. Marcus spent those 3 days in a bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, surrounded by the best military and scientific minds on Earth. They studied the ships. They analyzed the signals. They tried to find any weakness, any way to fight back. "Their technology is centuries ahead of ours," said General Thomas Wright, the commander of Earth's combined defense forces. "Our weapons would be like throwing rocks at them." "Then we need to find something else," Marcus replied. "There has to be a reason they're waiting. If they wanted to destroy us, they would have done it already." The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Vasquez, still on Mars with the artifact, made a breakthrough. "I've decoded more of the symbols," she said in her transmission. "The artifact isn't just a beacon, it's a key. And it's connected to something inside every human being." Marcus leaned forward. "What do you mean connected?" "Our DNA," Alina explained. "There are sequences in human DNA that don't match any other life form on Earth. Scientists have known about them for years, but we never understood what they were. Now I think I do. They're dormant code, Captain, and the artifact was designed to activate it." The room fell silent. The idea that humans were somehow engineered, that their very existence had been planned by some ancient alien race, was almost too much to accept. But it also offered hope. "Can you activate it?" Marcus asked. "I think so, but I need someone here with me, someone willing to be the first." Marcus did not hesitate. "I'm on my way." The journey to Mars took 2 weeks. During that time, the alien fleet remained still. But they were not inactive. Probes, small and fast, had been sent throughout the solar system, scanning everything. Earth, the Moon, Mars, the asteroid belt. They were gathering data, learning about humanity and their home. When Marcus arrived at the excavation site, he found Alina changed. She was thinner, her eyes dark from lack of sleep, but there was a fire in them that he had not seen before. "The artifact has been showing me things," she said. "The history of the Watchers. They're ancient, Captain, older than most stars. They travel the galaxy looking for species with potential. When they find one, they plant an artifact and wait." "Wait for what?" Marcus asked. "For them to evolve, to grow, to reach the point where they can find the artifact and activate it." Alina's voice trembled. "But most species fail the trial, Captain. Most are judged unworthy." "And what happens to them?" "They're eliminated, erased, as if they never existed." Marcus felt cold inside. The fleet waiting at the edge of the solar system was not an invasion force. It was an executioner's squad. "Then we need to pass this trial," he said. "Show me how to activate the code." Alina led him to the artifact. It was glowing again, pulsing with a slow, steady rhythm that almost seemed like a heartbeat. The symbols on its surface had formed new patterns, images of DNA strands and neural pathways. "Place your hand on the surface," Alina instructed. "The artifact will do the rest." Marcus took a deep breath. He thought about Earth, about the billions of people waiting in fear. He thought about his daughter, just 12 years old, who dreamed of becoming an astronaut like her father. He thought about all the potential that humanity had, all the wonders they could create if given the chance. Then he placed his hand on the artifact. The world exploded into light. It was not painful. It was not even uncomfortable. It was like waking up from a dream that he had been having his entire life. Suddenly, he could see things he had never seen before. The electromagnetic spectrum spread out before him in brilliant colors. He could hear radio waves, feel gravity pulling at every atom of his body, sense the rotation of planets and the burning of distant stars. And with this awareness came power. Marcus lifted his hand from the artifact and looked at it. It looked the same as before, but it was not. He could feel energy flowing through his veins, responding to his thoughts. He focused on a rock nearby, and it lifted into the air, floating gently before him. "Telekinesis," Alina whispered. "The dormant code gave you telekinesis." But that was just the beginning. Over the next few hours, Marcus discovered that he could do much more. He could move faster than any human should be able to move. He could withstand temperatures that would kill an ordinary person. He could process information at speeds that made even the most advanced computers look slow. "The artifact has unlocked your full potential," Alina explained. "All humans have this ability, dormant within their DNA. The Watchers put it there 2 billion years ago. They seeded the primitive oceans of Earth with the building blocks of human evolution, and they included this code, waiting for the day when we would be ready." "Ready for what?" Marcus asked. "For the trial, for the challenge that every species must face when they activate an artifact. The Watchers are testing us, Captain. They want to see if we're worthy of joining the galaxy." Marcus turned toward the horizon, where he knew the alien fleet waited beyond the stars. He could sense them now, thousands of ships filled with beings that had judged countless civilizations. Most had been found wanting. Most had been destroyed. But humanity was different. Marcus could feel it in his bones, in the new power flowing through him. They were not going to fail. "We need to wake up everyone," he said. "Every human on Earth. Can the artifact do that?" Alina nodded slowly. "I think so, but it will require an enormous amount of energy. We would need," she paused, calculating, "we would need the output of the sun." Marcus smiled. For the first time since this had all begun, he felt hope. "Then let's go get it." The Watchers observed from their ships. They had seen this pattern many times before. A species would find the artifact. A few individuals would awaken, and then, inevitably, they would fail. They would fight among themselves. They would let fear control them. They would prove themselves unworthy. The High Observer, a being of pure energy that had existed for billions of years, watched the human named Marcus Cole with particular interest. This one had awakened faster than most, and instead of panicking, instead of using his new powers to dominate others, he was planning something. "The human is traveling toward their star," reported one of the junior Watchers. "He intends to harness its energy." "Ambitious," the High Observer replied, "but foolish. No biological entity can survive the surface of a star." "Should we intervene?" "No, we observe, we judge. We do not interfere." The High Observer had made this decision countless times. It was the way of the Watchers. They had seeded thousands of worlds, planted thousands of artifacts, and watched as species after species failed to meet their potential. Only a handful had ever passed the trial, and none had done so in the way this human seemed to be attempting. Marcus flew through space without a ship. His awakened body did not need air, did not need protection from the vacuum. He could feel the solar wind on his skin, see the currents of radiation flowing from the sun. It was beautiful in a terrifying way. Behind him, he left a trail of light, energy streaming from his enhanced form. He was pushing himself to the limit, traveling at speeds that would have destroyed any spacecraft. The sun grew larger and larger before him, its surface a churning sea of fire. "Marcus, your vital signs are spiking," Elena's voice came through on a quantum link. "The artifact is monitoring you if you push too hard." "I know," he replied, "but we don't have a choice. How long until the Watchers act?" "Based on the patterns I've decoded, their patience lasts exactly one of their cycles. That's about 72 Earth hours from the first awakening." Marcus calculated quickly. He had been awake for almost 40 hours. That left them just over a day to awaken every human on Earth and prove their worth. It was an impossible task. But then again, everything about this situation was impossible. He reached the sun. The heat was beyond anything he had ever experienced. Even with his enhanced body, he could feel it trying to break him down, to reduce him to atoms. But he pushed through, diving into the corona, reaching toward the nuclear fires at the sun's core. And there, in the heart of the star, he found what he was looking for. A second artifact. It was larger than the one on Mars, nearly the size of a building, and it was made of the same light-absorbing black material. It had been placed here billions of years ago, hidden where no one would ever think to look. "There's another one," Marcus reported. "In the sun, the Watchers left 2 artifacts in our system." Elena's response took a moment. When she spoke, her voice was filled with wonder. "That's never been recorded. No species has ever found a second artifact. Marcus, do you understand what this means?" "It means the Watchers expected something special from us," Marcus replied, "and we're going to prove them right." He placed his hands on the solar artifact and felt power beyond imagination flow into him. The energy of the sun, the fusion of billions of hydrogen atoms every second, channeled through his body and outward, across the solar system, toward Earth. On Earth, people felt it. They did not know what it was at first. It started as a warmth in their chest, a tingling in their fingers. Some thought they were having heart attacks. Others thought they were dreaming. And then they woke up. It happened all at once, 8 billion people experiencing the same awakening that Marcus had felt. The dormant code in their DNA activated, unlocking abilities they had never known they possessed. Some gained telepathy. Others could control fire or water. Some could phase through solid matter. A few, like Marcus, could fly. The world transformed in an instant. In hospitals, dying patients suddenly healed themselves. In prisons, guards and prisoners alike found themselves with the power to walk through walls. In boardrooms and slums, in schools and battlefields, people who had been enemies moments before looked at each other with new eyes. They could feel each other now. The telepaths among them created a network connecting minds across continents. Old hatreds seemed petty. Old fears seemed small. They were all part of something bigger now, something they were only beginning to understand. The Watchers noticed. "The humans have achieved mass awakening," a junior Watcher reported. "All members of their species have activated the code." The High Observer was silent for a long moment. In all the billions of years since they had begun their work, this had never happened. Species awakened individuals, sometimes even small groups, but never an entire population, never all at once. "They found the solar artifact," another Watcher said. "No one has ever done that before." "Because no one was ever meant to," the High Observer replied. "It was placed there as a final test, a hidden challenge for species that exceeded our expectations. And these humans, they are exceeding all expectations." Marcus emerged from the sun, his body glowing with absorbed energy. He could feel the minds of every human on Earth, feel their fear turning to wonder, their confusion becoming understanding. And he could feel them looking up at the stars, toward the fleet of alien ships that still waited at the edge of the solar system. They were not afraid anymore. They were ready. "The trial is not over," Elena's voice came through the link. "The Watchers are moving. Their ships are approaching." Marcus nodded, even though she could not see him. He had known this was coming. The awakening was just the first step. Now came the real test. "Then let's go meet them," he said. And across the Earth, millions of newly awakened humans rose into the sky to join him. The Watcher fleet moved through space like a living thing. Thousands of ships, each 1 mile across, arranged in perfect geometric patterns. They had destroyed civilizations with a fraction of this force. They had ended species that had thought themselves invincible. And now they faced something they had never seen before. The humans came to meet them not in ships but on their own. Millions of them flying through the void of space, trailing light behind them like living stars. They moved together, guided by the telepathic network that now connected all of humanity. They were not an army. They were something more. They were a species united as one. Marcus led them. He had absorbed more of the sun's energy than anyone else, and his power reflected that. He burned like a small star himself, leading his people toward the alien fleet. "This is Captain Marcus Cole of Earth," he broadcast on all frequencies. "We have awakened. We are ready for your trial." The response came immediately. The High Observer's voice filled their minds, bypassing radio waves entirely. "Remarkable. In all our history, no species has ever achieved full awakening before the trial began. You are unprecedented." "Is that good?" Marcus asked. "It is. Interesting. But the trial is not about power alone. Many species have been powerful. They all failed because they could not control that power. They let it destroy them from within." Marcus felt the minds of his people. He felt their fear, their uncertainty, but also their hope. They had come so far, overcome so much. They were not going to fail now. "What is the trial?" he asked. "Simple," the High Observer replied. "Survive." The attack came without warning. The Watcher ships opened fire with weapons that bent space itself. Reality twisted around the humans, trying to tear them apart at the atomic level. Stars flickered in the background as space-time folded and unfolded in impossible patterns. People died, thousands of them in the first moments of the assault. Their awakened bodies, so much stronger than before, were still not strong enough to withstand the full force of Watcher technology. But they did not break. The telepathic network held them together. When one person fell, others caught them, shared their strength, kept them alive. The healers among them worked constantly, repairing damage as fast as it was inflicted. The telekinetics created shields, deflecting the worst of the attacks. And slowly, impossibly, they began to push back. Marcus led the charge. He flew directly into the heart of the Watcher fleet, dodging weapons fire, absorbing what he could and deflecting the rest. Behind him came thousands of others, each one using their unique abilities to find weaknesses in the alien defenses. "They're adapting," a junior Watcher reported. "Their tactics are evolving in real time. They're sharing information through their mental link, learning from every attack." The High Observer watched with growing fascination. "Increase the intensity," it commanded. The assault doubled, then tripled. The humans were pushed back, their shields failing, their numbers falling. But still they held on, still they fought. On Earth, those who had stayed behind felt everything through the telepathic link. They felt their brothers and sisters dying in space, felt the fear and pain and determination. And they did what humans had always done in times of crisis. They helped. Billions of minds focused as one, pouring their energy into the network. People who had never believed in anything beyond themselves found themselves praying, hopping, willing their people to survive. And that energy, that collective focus, flowed through the link and into the humans fighting in space. Marcus felt it like a wave of warmth washing over him. Suddenly he was stronger than he had ever been. The power of 8 billion minds, united in a single purpose, flowed through his veins. Now, he said to his people, now we show them what we are. The counterattack was unlike anything the Watchers had ever seen. Humans who had been barely surviving moments before now pushed forward with unstoppable force. They phased through hull plates and disabled weapons from within. They absorbed energy blasts and redirected them back at their sources. They moved as one, a billion parts of a single mind, each one knowing exactly what the others were doing. The Watcher ships began to fall. Not destroyed, but disabled. The humans were careful about that. They could have killed, could have unleashed their full fury against these aliens who had threatened their world. But they chose not to. They chose mercy. The High Observer watched as its fleet was systematically neutralized. It felt something it had not felt in eons: surprise, wonder, and perhaps, just perhaps, respect. "Cease fire," it commanded. "The trial is over." The weapons fell silent. The humans paused, waiting, still connected in their network, still ready to fight if needed. Marcus flew toward the largest ship, the one where he could sense the most powerful presence. He landed on its surface, his feet finding purchase on the strange black material. A door opened before him, and he walked inside. The interior was vast and dark, filled with shapes that defied description. At its center floated the High Observer, a being of pure energy, patterns of light shifting within its form. "You fought well," the Observer said, "but more importantly, you fought together, and you showed mercy when you could have shown destruction." "We're not monsters," Marcus replied. "We never wanted to fight, we just wanted to survive." "And that," the High Observer said, "is precisely why you have passed." The aftermath was unlike anything in human history. In the days that followed, the Watchers did not leave. Instead, they opened their archives, sharing knowledge that humanity had only dreamed of. Faster-than-light travel, clean energy, medical technologies that could cure any disease, the accumulated wisdom of billions of years freely given. The High Observer explained it all to Marcus and the other leaders who had emerged during the trial. "The test is not just about survival," it said. "It is about worthiness. Most species, when given power, use it to dominate. They destroy themselves from within, torn apart by their own ambition and fear. But you unified." "We had to," Marcus said. "We didn't have a choice." "There is always a choice," the Observer replied. "Other species could have unified. They had the ability, but they chose conflict instead. You are the first species in 300 million years to choose differently." Elena, who had joined the delegation, asked the question that had been on everyone's mind. "Why? Why do you test species like this? Why not just help them from the beginning?" The High Observer was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice carried a weight of ancient sadness. "Because we made that mistake once. Long ago, when we were young, we shared our knowledge freely. We uplifted species that were not ready, and they used our gifts to wage wars of extinction. Entire galaxies burned. Trillions of lives ended. We learned painfully that power must be earned, not given." "So you became the judges," Marcus said, "the gatekeepers." "Yes, it is a burden, but a necessary one. The universe cannot afford another dark age. So we test, we observe, and when a species proves itself worthy, we welcome them into the community of stars." The news spread across Earth. Humanity had passed the trial. They were not alone in the universe, and they had been accepted by the oldest civilization in existence. The fear of the past weeks turned to celebration. In every city, in every village, people danced and laughed and cried with relief. But the changes went deeper than celebration. The awakening had not faded. Every human still possessed the abilities they had gained, and the telepathic network still connected them all. Old conflicts seemed pointless now. What was the use of fighting over borders when they could feel each other's pain? What was the value of hoarding resources when they could share their thoughts? Slowly, over the months that followed, humanity began to rebuild itself. Governments evolved into something more democratic, more responsive to the collective will. Economies shifted toward cooperation rather than competition. Crime dropped to almost nothing, because potential criminals could not hide their intentions from a world of telepaths. It was not perfect. There were still disagreements, still conflicts, still moments of selfishness and anger. But they were resolved faster now, healed by the understanding that came from truly knowing another person's mind. 1 year after the trial, the first human ships launched into deep space. They were built with Watcher technology, crewed by volunteers from every nation on Earth. Their mission was exploration, discovery, the fulfillment of humanity's oldest dream. Marcus stood on the bridge of the lead ship, watching as Earth grew smaller behind them. Beside him stood Elena, now recognized as one of the most brilliant scientists in human history. They had come so far from that day on Mars, when they had first uncovered the artifact. "Do you ever wonder," Elena asked, "what would have happened if we had failed?" "Sometimes," Marcus admitted. "But I think, even if the Watchers had decided to destroy us, we would have found a way. That's what humans do. We survive, we adapt, we keep going." "The Watchers said we're unique," Elena said, "that no other species has ever unified the way we did." "Maybe that's our gift," Marcus said. "Not just the powers we gained, but the ability to come together, to be stronger as one than we ever could be alone." The ship entered hyperspace, reality blurring around them as they crossed distances that would have taken generations with old technology. They were heading toward a sector of the galaxy the Watchers had marked as unexplored. No one knew what they would find there. That was the whole point. Back on Earth, humanity continued to grow and change. The old problems did not disappear overnight, but they became manageable. Climate change was reversed with new technologies. Poverty was eliminated as resources were shared more fairly. The wounds of centuries began to heal. And among the stars, the Watchers watched. For the first time in eons, they felt something like hope. This species, these humans, had surprised them. They had exceeded every expectation, passed every test, and done so while holding onto their compassion. The High Observer recorded a message for the archives, the same archives that had documented the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Species designation, human. Origin, Sol system, third planet. Status, past. Note, first species to achieve full awakening before trial. First species to show mercy during combat trial. First species to unify completely across entire population. Recommendation, observe with particular interest. This species may be what we have been waiting for. Years passed. Human ships spread across the galaxy, making first contact with dozens of other species. Some were friendly, some were hostile, some were so alien that communication was nearly impossible. But humanity approached each encounter with the same spirit that had saved them during the trial. They sought understanding. They offered friendship. They fought only when they had to, and they always chose mercy over destruction. Marcus Cole became a legend. The first awakened, the one who flew into the sun, the man who led humanity through its darkest hour. But he never saw himself that way. He was just a soldier who had done what was necessary, guided by the same instinct that had driven humans since they first walked upright on the African plains. The instinct to survive, to protect, to reach for something greater than themselves. In the end, that was what the Watchers had been looking for all along. Not power, not intelligence, not even unity. They had been looking for hope. The hope that somewhere in the vast, cold universe, there was a species that could be trusted with the future. A species that would use their gifts to lift up rather than tear down. A species that would remember their origins even as they reached for the stars. Humanity was that species. The artifact on Mars still stood, a monument to the moment everything changed. Visitors came from across the galaxy to see it, to stand where Marcus Cole had stood when he first placed his hand on its surface. They wanted to understand what made humans different, what had allowed them to pass where so many others had failed. But the answer was not in the artifact. It was in the hearts of the humans who had touched it. It was in their stubborn refusal to give up, their endless capacity for love and sacrifice, their ability to look at the unknown and see not threat but opportunity. The ancient artifact had awakened humanity's might, but the might had always been there, waiting. It just needed the right moment to emerge. And now, free among the stars, humanity's greatest adventure was only just beginning.